If y'all want to kind of make your way to your seats, we'll get started here in just a minute. May have to do away with the mute music there. All right, we have lost our soundtrack there, kind of happening soundtrack. Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Webb. I'm the chairman of the Alamo Area MPO. I'm going to call this joint meeting of the Alamo Area MPO and the Capital Area MPO Transportation Policy Boards to order. It is after 11 o'clock, and I'm here with my colleague from CAMPO, Cynthia Long, the chair from up there. I guess I'll say I'm really happy to have us together. We don't do this enough, and if we're following along with what we're supposed to be doing as far as cooperating and collaborating and all that stuff, we ought to be doing it between regions. So I'm excited about this meeting. It's great to see you. It's great to have everyone here. And then I think you want to go around the room and do introductions?
Yeah, and I just want to say welcome as well. Thank you all for taking the time out of your Friday to be here. I think it's, as Chair Webb has said, it's important that from a regional perspective that we get together more frequently than we have. And again, welcome. And if we want to just start with an around the room, we'll start with you, Commissioner Howard.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Ann Howard from Travis County, Precinct 3, which goes from downtown to Jonestown. And I'm in my Juneteenth outfit. The party has started back in Travis County, so I'll be coming out to go play some pickleball with our staff.
The hard work of elected officials.
Hi, I'm Eva Tillett. I'm the representative appointed by Travis County Commission.
Good morning. My name is Rudy Newman, and I'm the interim director of the City of San Antonio's Planning Department.
Hello, my name is Cammie Horn, and I am here representing via Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio.
Hello, my name is Javier Paredes, and I'm also representing via Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio.
Hello, my name is Ed Cherio, and I'm a commissioner in Caldwell County of Precinct 3, which is the western side.
Hi there, Heather Ashley Nguyen, Texas Department of Transportation, Planning and Development Director, Austin District, here for Tucker.
Diane Rath, Executive Director of the Alamo Area Council of Government, and I'm ex officio on MPO.
Matt Harris, I'm the Metro Appointments CAMPO Board.
People are not pressing the buttons.
Andres Campos, I represent the City of New Braunfels, council member from District 1.
Good morning. I'm Chris Riley, Mayor of the City of Leon Valley, which is a suburb in Bexar County, and I represent the GBCCC, which is Greater Bexar County Council of Cities, Suburban Cities on the AA MPO board. Thank you.
Rebecca Clay Flores, Bexar County Commissioner, Precinct 1.
And she's also going to be our chair here in a couple years. We do a rotation, so it's a little bit different. And I think we'll have our chair-elect, who will take office here in another few weeks. In a little while, it's Councilwoman Cabello Haverda from the City of San Antonio. And I'm Kevin Webb. I'm Comal County Commissioner for Precinct 3, and I've been chair for a couple of years now.
And again, Cynthia Long, I'm a Williamson County Commissioner and have been chair of CAMPO for several years and have served on our MPO for 17 years.
Wow. Rudy Mateer, City of Pflugerville, and Vice Chair of CAMPO.
Hi, I'm Clara Beckett. I'm a county commissioner in Bastrop County, and I've been on the CAMPO board 12 years.
20.
Something like that.
Good morning. I'm Donna Dodge, and I'm the mayor of Seguin, filling in for the past mayor, Don Kyle, who is in Italy really enjoying himself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Kutcher. I'm the county judge in Guadalupe County.
Good morning. I'm Christine Delisle, Mayor of Leander.
Good morning, CAMPO member Jane Hewson, Mayor of the City of San Marcos, Texas. Welcome, and if you don't get all your sightseeing and shopping done today, we welcome you back anytime.
Jim Penman-Moran, Mayor of Cedar Park, Texas. Charles Benavides, Texas Department of Transportation, San Antonio Deputy District Engineer.
David Wegman, Interim Public Works Director and County Engineer for Bexar County.
John Courage, City Councilman, District 9, San Antonio, relatively new member to AMPO.
Kevin Wolf with VIA, and I might have been on one or two of these boards before. For a long time.
Good morning. Ashby Johnson. I'm the CAMPO Executive Director.
Good morning. Sid Martinez, Executive Director for the Alamo Area MPO.
You want to do this?
Yeah. So thank you all, and again, it's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Item number 2 on our agenda is regional demographics presentation, and the Texas Demographics Center is going to provide us with that this morning. So if you want to go ahead and come on up.
All right, now I'm going to get a mouthful.
Just make sure the button's up.
Can you all hear me now? Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Helen Yu from the Texas Demographic Center. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad we have the opportunity to talk about demographics today. Probably the topic recently has been as hot as the summer heat of Texas, right? So I work at the Texas Demographic Center. We are a focal point, serve as a focal point for demographic and socioeconomic research in Texas. Our director, Lloyd Potter, is appointed as the state demographer by the governor. And we are required by law to produce population estimates every year and projections every other year. Meanwhile, we are also the census liaison in Texas. So that's kind of a background. And I know that you're all eager to discuss about this region, but let me start with Texas in general, just to set a context, if you would. See if this is working. Okay, good. So then let me start with 2020, not long ago, but seems perhaps a century ago. The reason being, in 2020, the U.S. Census Bureau conducted the decennial census. Every 10 years, that's the only chance. Every 10 years, the whole United States get to be counted. The census is supposed to reach every household, every person in the United States. So, and it's considered to be the most accurate count. And that's why after every census, all of the people who are using that estimates projections get reset using the official number. According to the official count, Texas had a population of a little over 29 million. That was 4 million increase from the last decade and a 16% growth rate. So it's old news now. We were the only state that gained 2 seats because of that growth. And so right around the census date, unfortunately, something happened, which was the pandemic. So many wonder, hey, what's happening now with the population growth? And by the way, you probably heard the number of 1,000 people moving into Texas last decade, and that actually came from that 4 million averaged into a daily number. It may not be entirely true, as we can see later, but you can clearly see the impact of pandemic in 2021 estimates from the Census Bureau. The nation came to a halt in growth, almost, only 0.16% growth rate due to a declined natural increase, and also because the international migration almost came to a halt. Meanwhile, Texas slowed down a little bit, but not quite so much. We were still at an annual rate of 1.12%. Compared to other states, especially some historically, big population center like California, New York, who have seen population declines. So 2022 is here. And of course, we added about 900 people, not much less than before. All right, coming 2022, I don't know whether the pandemic was behind us, but at least in terms of population growth, it seems that we're right back on track. We now have, or last year, we had 1.59% annual growth rate, exactly like last decade. And because we had a bigger population base now, we actually are adding more people every day, close to 1,300 every day to our Texas population. So across the states, of course, not everybody get the population growth. In fact, when you look at the green areas, these are counties, and 143 of them, more than half of all the 254 counties, have lost population. So it seems that all the population growth happened or took place in the, population centers in the triangle areas, and also some of the metropolitan areas, a few of them, in West Texas and along the border. So apparently, we all like each other so much that we want to still all go to the population centers, right? So, in fact, if you draw a line along I-35, you'll find that 87 or around that number, depending on which you're looking at, 87 or so % of population resides in the counties on that line or east of that line. So very much unevenly distributed across Texas. So, and this is numerical growth, and here when you look at growth rate, then you see some other pattern emerge here. So now you can see where areas are growing the fastest. So for example, in the triangle area, it's not Dallas County, it's not Harris County, it's not even Bexar or Travis that's growing the fastest. It's the counties surrounding them where you see the fastest growing rate, right? 2-3 weeks ago, the newest estimates on places, cities and towns was released by the Census Bureau. And now, this is probably not new to the people here. We have been, for several years, seeing cities, towns on the top charts here. All the familiar, the cities around us, along the triangle areas, all these cities around us being on the top chart of both growth rate and numeric growth. I think incredibly, to me, cities like Georgetown, which is already a big-sized town, close to 1 million people, and some of these like Leander, New Braunfels, probably exceeding 1 million people, still having growth, fastest growth rate in the country, not just in Texas, but in the country. That just speaks to, how much the area has grown, So, all right. And in general, of course, we're not surprised at all at the population growth. But under the scene, let's look at, there are other things going on under that surface. So I mentioned earlier, 1,000 people was added to the population. Many people said it was moving. It's actually not entirely true, because when you look at source of growth, that's through a demographer's lens, we usually see them in 2 different components. So in this chart, I listed 3 components there. Blue is the natural increase, which is birth minus death. Net international migration, the orange bars, and net domestic migration, the gray bars. So all the growth can be looked at this, into these 3 components. On the surface, population has been growing, all this time. But when you look at the components, you will notice that at the beginning of the decade, natural increase, the blue bar, actually accounted for more, or around half of the growth. So it's not just people moving into Texas, that 1,000. Half of them actually were born, or actually birth excessive of death, that's been added to the population. As the decade goes on, things changed. Natural increase slowed down by quite a lot. These are numbers, these are not composition rates. International migration came down, right, until we got to the lowest point of the pandemic year, 2021. Domestic migration, on the other hand, No, they're not following anything. There may be up and downs during the decade, but, oops, sorry, but it shoot right up back, there, probably regardless of the pandemic there. So now we're seeing at the end of the decade, migration, both domestic and international migration, perhaps more domestic migration, dominating the source of growth. So although we're seeing the growth, the source of growth has changed. And so in the next several slides, I'm going to talk about several trends we're seeing that may impact future growth. So I talked about the natural increase being slowed down. The reason is here. So this is birth rate by race ethnic groups in Texas. So blue line, that's high up there, is the Hispanic population. So since somewhere the end of last decade, Texas and actually everywhere else in the U.S., we have seen a drastic decline of birth rates across board, but especially among the Hispanic population that used to have pretty high fertility rate. So that's one end of the thing, because as you can see in this pyramid, this was the population pyramid in 2010 for Texas. If you look at the bars, each bar is an age cohort, right? I color it to make them a little fancy to represent generations, right? But basically, they're just population pyramids showing the composition of each age group. So in Texas, if you look at the bars, they are mostly even, meaning each coming cohort is about the same as before, with some exceptions of the baby boomer, maybe. Moving to 2020, you can clearly see the yellow part section, which is actually the baby boomer. They're entering a very important stage in life, and that's the retirement age. And they're probably going to move up the pyramid in the future. And think about the impact on the end of that population period, high end there. Increased deaths. Actually, the deaths in Texas have been increasing every year in the past 5 years. And not the rate, but the death numbers itself. On the other end is what I talked about earlier. Because of that declined birth rate, every cohort that came in after 2010, the purple kind of part there, every cohort, a new cohort, was smaller than the previous one. So that's the impact you can see here of birth and death, and that's why you see that slowdown of natural increase. And so the other thing, I talked about domestic migration being so important now. This is another interesting map, a little maybe hard at the beginning, but basically it's comparing domestic migration between two periods of 2010 to 2020 and recent, the last year, to see if there have been changes there. And so the dark blue are in, like, both periods in. Red is out. So they're in and out, probably not surprising in most of the cases. So what's really interesting is the yellowish part of that. This is net in last decade, but net out just last 2 years or so. So you can see it's, in that area of Permian Basin, the oil fields. Perhaps more interesting is actually what I want to highlight is the light blue areas. These are areas where you saw they had net out-migration last decade, but in-migration in the past year. And so if you look at them, they're not in West Texas. They're actually kind of on the edge of all these dark blue, the fast-growing areas. This, of course, is just 1 year of data. We don't know. We're going to monitor that and see if that persists into the future, right? Whether we are seeing what people have been talking about all the time, people moving to more remote areas, right? So further away from the suburban rings. So, two trends I want to highlight. And now we can move to our region. I got all the counties listed on your website. Hopefully I got all of them. Apologies if I haven't, but anyway. So the biggest 3 counties, of course, were you can see here. And these are the growth, this is the growth in the last century. You know, I can probably say that we have had a century, more than a century of population growth. It didn't just happen recently. I think it first started with the biggest county in the area there, and then followed by Travis, and Williamson was the late player, probably only start to pick up speed around 70, 80, you know. But once they pick up the speed, the growth was exponential, right? And the big counties probably cover up the smaller ones, so I took them out, and now you can see, wow, all the smaller counties are doing the same thing, although they probably started later than those 3. A little bit of the exception probably was Caldwell, probably not growing as much as the other areas. So that's the historical growth. And zooming in the last year, and this is where, so we can see the source of growth I talked about earlier. And so if you look at the rates, you know, all the rates are positive, you know, there's no population decrease in this area. Bear and Travis, though, you actually see a slower growth rates than the state. They're slowing down in growth rates, although, you know, the numbers are still pretty high. On the other hand, all the other counties are actually having higher than the state growth rates. And more importantly, if you look at the patterns, as I said, the source of growth, you can see that Bear and Travis, they display a very distinct pattern there. It seems in their growth, the natural increase, births minus deaths, international migration account more than all the other counties in the area. So they get natural increase, and they get international migration, right? And then it seems that they are, you know, out-migrating some of these to the surrounding counties, as we can see later. All the rest of the counties look at the source of growth, just dominantly domestic migration. And as you can see later, all these probably came from the center county. Before we go there, you know, just another, you know, angle at this. If you look at the houses built in this area.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Go
When you
ahead.
say in migration, is that within the state of Texas, or is it domestic migration coming from anywhere in the U.S.?
Anywhere. So this would include, the 95% would include migration to come out, for example, from Bear County.
But,
for this one,
but
when you,
potentially from other states too.
they could be from the other states, yeah. So
And then another
Both,
question for
you know,
international migration, is that initial arrivals?
yes, you're absolutely right. Initial arrivals, yes. Once they're here, they begin to move their domestic migration, yes. And so the other perspective is, if you look at the housing stock, you know, how, you know, this is where you can zoom in, because so far we've been talking about counties, right? So zoom in to see which areas experience growth by looking at when the houses were built. Very interesting too, right? So it started before 1970 in the center of Bear County and Travis, right? And then moving on, you see expansions outside, immediately outside the center. And then moving on, wow, now we see more buildings or housing units out there, right, in the surrounding counties. Interestingly, after 2010, you actually see lots of concentrations of new houses building just right around in the suburbs of the city centers. Right, so it seems that there are some coming backs, almost like to the immediate suburbs there. So that's the historical trend, and now we can talk more about migration flows. Right, so we were talking about it earlier. This is domestic migration. Let's look at the flows to get a little bit more idea of the dynamics, you know, under the surface of the growing number. So the first one is Bear County as destination. So the top bars are where we get are positive net migration. There are flows, all around. So when you take the difference between in and out, so the top 10 are the ones where we get positive migration from, right? If you look at the states, they're still mostly Texas for Bexar County, right? You see, it seems that biggest centers are, many of them are kind of south of Texas, right? So Webb County, Hidalgo, right? And depending on years, this is the newest data, 2021. You see, because these are sometimes very small numbers, they're samples, but you kind of see the general patterns there. Bexar County doesn't get migration mostly not from surrounding counties, but when you look at out-migration, they are actually out-migrating a lot to the surrounding counties, right? So Williamson, Travis, Brazos, all these counties are pretty in shorter distance there. Looking at Travis, there are some similarities, but also differences there. Again, top bar. Now we're getting, our Travis is getting migration from California. You've heard a lot about that, especially, recently you get like Los Angeles, I think Santa Clara, so lots of migration from there. And also some of the biggest metropolitan areas in Texas, right? Including actually Bexar County. So by the way, I didn't list everyone. There is a long list of migration. These are just the top 10 I chose. Down there then, if you look at similar to Bexar County, now when you see out-migration, they're out-migrating not far away places. It's just all the counties surrounding them, especially Williamson. Look at the Williamson County. And so I didn't list the rest of the other counties, but you can kind of see the pattern. If you look at them, all the surrounding counties, you'll probably see a very similar thing. If you were to draft Williamson, you will see this dominating bar, right? Williamson County, if you were to look at it, where the immigration really just come from Travis, the center of that. You probably will see the similar things for New Braunfels, dominant bar of, not New Braunfels, Comal. I actually had it earlier, but I took it out. From the dominant migration from Bexar County. So you can kind of have a peek here just to see a pattern emerges. It seems that Travis and Bexar County serve kind of as the population center here, where they get migration from internationally. By the way, I do have a chart of international migration. These are international migration to these two areas. Recent years, in last decade, you actually saw lots of increase in the immigrants coming from the Asian countries. Probably unlike what other people was, thinking, most of migration from Central America. Recent years, we actually saw a lot more from Asia. And probably more so to Travis County, and in Bexar County, we also do get lots of Central American immigrants there. So you can kind of see these two big counties getting population from all over the world and all over the U.S., and then kind of like a sending center and send the population to the surrounding counties. Once people move here who settle down, they would go to the suburbs. Okay. So far, all the population talk about our residential population. This is kind of our area. We look at residential population area. What complicate things are actually where you work. Where you work might not match where you live, right? This is probably of more interest to people here because you look at transportation, infrastructure, all these kind of things. So this is when I venture out to a tool produced by the Census Bureau on the map, where you can look at people or the number of people work and reside at different areas. So this here, just as an example, I chose, I think this one is Comal. So if you look at Comal County, these are So the numbers 51701 are the people who live there, who live in Comal County, who are also working, that they capture in the data set. And you can see that, of course, lots of them are working in the same county, and lots of them are working, of course, where else? Bexar County, right? So, but they also travel or maybe working from home, right, to other surrounding counties. So you can clearly see that they are not all residing in the counties they're working. Similarly, if you look at Williamson, this is Williamson. So lots of them work, actually lots of them work in Williamson. It seems that Williamson has or is becoming a work center too. But also, of course, Travis County and all the surrounding counties too. So this will give you, this tool will give you kind of a sense of that kind of mismatch or even, I guess, commuting patterns in some way. So, and that's a reminder, the numbers you see from Census Bureau and from us are residential population. So I remember a couple of years ago, Harris County and Dallas County actually saw a decline of population, and they challenged that to the Census Bureau and said, we're still seeing so much traffic, so many things. Well, yes, but maybe it's not the people who are living there. It's the people who go to work there. So anyways, and now, now let's, in last part of my presentation, let's take a sneak peek in the future. So now you know how we look at things. It's probably not very hard for you to understand how we do our projections. We usually start at the base, the 2020 population, and then move on to the next year by, taking out deaths. These are projected deaths because we're projecting. We don't know the actual deaths. We try to project the future. We think in general death rate, probably survival rates will still be improving after the pandemic. And then I guess the next component is actually pretty important, the net migration. This part actually is the hardest to predict, right? Who knows? So the way we're taking it is to look at a historical period, and usually it's the most recent period. In the latest vintage projection, we look at the period between 2010 and 2020, look at the migration pattern during that period, and then make the assumption this will carry on in the future. We did not add any trend. We're not thinking whether it's going down or up, but we take that migration scenario, add that, calculate the migrants, add that to the population, and then the only thing you're missing now is, of course, population zero, which we get from projecting the fertility rate. We know how many women are in the population, we know the fertility rate, or we project the fertility rate, and then you get the population age 0. And that's how we do our projections. The way we do it is we constantly monitor the migration trend and update our projections every year. So for example, in 2014, we had a projection, and you probably heard on the news a lot, population is going to double in 40 years. That came from here. But middle of the decade, we adjusted our projection by looking further at the migration rates. We adjusted the projection down. This was actually the last one before 2020 census. And when we compare 2020 census, we overprojected by about 1.8%. Later, when the Census Bureau evaluated their counts, they concluded that Texas might have been undercounted by 1.9%. So if you take that into consideration, our projection at the state level was actually right on point. And so, but when we looked at the new number, the 2020 census, we further adjusted our projections. Now it's even slower than we projected before, not only because of the migration rates, but also perhaps most importantly because the adjustment we made to the fertility rate. We're projecting a low fertility rate in the future. And so that's our latest population projections. And under that 1.0 scenario, these are all the counties we have there. There's no mystery. It's just, pretty simple calculation there. So I'm not going to go into the details because supposedly the assumption being there, you will see all these counties growing, similarly like what they did in the last decade. And so I want to add a few words about our projection. Obviously, when you look at the method, there are limitations, right? I guess the biggest limitation is the migration. It's probably not likely that every county will keep the same migration rate. But we hope that people can use it as a baseline when they monitor their area, compare the current, growth rate or migration pattern with what we have or with what the last decade you see, and can adjust that projection based on the knowledge you have. And perhaps in this particular region, you do know that somebody is coming to build a big factory and build up all the houses that house all those workers. You can add your own factors in there. So that's our suggestion of how you can use our projection. We also have a separate scenario, the 0.5 migration scenario on our website. So with that, I'm going to conclude. If there's anything that we don't talk about here, go on our website, call us if we can help you with anything. And here is our contact information. Follow us on social media. We actually tweet about this event today. So, all right.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Yu?
I've got one, Madam Chair. What I found fascinating was that you did the just position for those specific areas that had a net migration, but in the last year or so, you've seen an increase in their, migration internal to those areas. Why use the last year? Because that seems like a finite amount of evidence to look at from there. Is there something of interest that you're looking at specifically to say, okay, this may be a minute period of time, but it's still a interesting thing to look at? Because you said you're going to manage it and look at it moving forward. Why not look at like a 5-year period as opposed to that and seeing if that ultimately from there?
That's a very good question. I think the reason we look at this year, and usually 5 year is more stable when you look at things. I think this is because the timing. This was right after or the year after the pandemic. The assumption is, or the interest is really working from home scenario. Right? So does the possibility of working from home make people think they can move further into more remote areas, right? So.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I know the Texas Water Development Board does a lot of population projections. In a general sense, how do y'all differ? Because I know I don't look at everybody's numbers, but for Bastrop County, for example, the conservative estimates from the state demographers are differing by like 50% than what the Texas Water Development Board population projections. And then I've kind of got to follow up in that, do y'all ever use any local truthing data in terms of permits, residential construction permits that are being issued? Because it's hard data on the ground to truth up some of your projections.
Both very good question. I was going to talk about that, but because of the time limited, so I'm very glad you raised that question. So that's why I introduced how we did that. If I understand it correctly, I think the Texas Workforce Board, when they do their projection, they look at employment numbers in different industries. They look at the growth of each industry, where the employment are there, and try to project by industry and try to project that way. In my eyes, just my own perspective, I think of our projection as almost like the supply of labor force. This is the capacity of growth of population based on the reproductive process, based on migration, right, somewhat. And for their projection, it's almost like the demand of labor force. I project that there going to be employment in this kind of industry of these many people, we want to have these many people, right? That's a very good question, because there are states who look at them both, compare, this is the number I come with, they don't match. Now they sometimes make adjustment to try to get a middle point. That's the direction we're thinking of going. Also try to maybe compare that. One of the biggest barrier for us is actually we don't have long-term employment projection. But perhaps, I don't know, we're thinking about this. In short term, we can try to adjust that, looking at their numbers, try to compare. And the other barrier is they don't project at the county level that we, as we do. I think, if I'm not mistaken. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay. And as for the local, like building permit, voter registration, we do collect those data. We use those data actually in our estimates, because there are things that have happened before, right? Again, it would be good if we can use it for the projection. The barrier, again, is we don't have a projection of all the building permits. We don't know what's in the future. We have to have that projection of building permit to be able to use that as a predictor. I think that's kind of our, that's why we didn't use those, but rather use a very simple birth, death, migration kind of thing to do that.
Okay, I think, did you have a question? Anybody down here? No, okay. Ashby.
Dr. Yu, it's my understanding that some of the Census Bureau numbers, or it might have been Bureau of Transportation Statistics, I forget which one it is, but there was an issue in their Python formula. For census. If there's an error in their formula that they need to correct in their programming formula?
Go ahead.
I'm sure you're aware of that. How is the state demographer taking that into account?
So if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about, I think there are errors, of course. I know I said this is probably the most accurate count of population, but there are still errors. And errors at least came from two things. One is the measuring error. If you don't, there are people who never respond. They have to impute, right? This kind of error that happens all the time to all the surveys. So this is one type of error. And that's what the 1.9% I was talking about. When they do a follow-up survey, they said, it could be undercounted by this. That's the evaluation on that. So at the national level, it was not bad. I mean, not too bad compared to last census, but at the state level, we did see Texas was the one that probably has the most undercount among all the states. That's one era. So I'm not sure. There's a new era actually being introduced into the 2020 census, which is I would call man-made era, where they introduce noises so that to provide privacy. So this is a different kind of era. Very technical. They just inject noises by a formula. It mostly impacts smaller areas like block level or tract level population, or small place, a population of small towns and cities. At the county level, especially for bigger counties, the impact is very small, at least for the total population. But when you go down to subgroups, like by age, by race, then things can really get tricky. I think the audience here is just fantastic. You're raising all the questions that we're discussing now. This is going to pose a big challenge for us, who depend on all these population, age, race to do our projections. I think I was discussing with the city demographer Austin about that too. How are we going to move forward? What data are we going to use because of all the noises and errors in there? And do we account for that possible undercount in Texas? So far we haven't, but we probably will discuss that more.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. And I think that's a great segue into our next topic. Thank you very much, Dr. Yu. We appreciate it greatly.
Thank you.
And for me, at least, one of the takeaways from this is, this is one of the things that feeds into our next round of long-range planning, and making sure that that data is right as it feeds down to the local level. And to Commissioner Beckett's question, how do we take what we know is happening on the ground and make that data real, is going to be something I think we all have to address as we hit the next round of planning. I'm going to turn it back over to you for the next topic.
All right. By the way, we're about to go through a couple chair changes, I said, and she's joined us now. And we also have Commissioner Calvert is here as well from Bexar County, so I want to welcome them. But I also really like this title, Madam Chair, so I'm looking forward to that.
I like it too.
Yeah, Madam Chair. That's a new one for us.
She has us trained well.
All right. Got to set everybody straight. Okay. Item number three. Regional projects updates from the Texas Department of Transportation. Austin is up first.
Today I'm going to be speaking about our shared corridors between our two districts, mainly US 281 and I-35. So I'll start with the I-35 corridor. So this shows a bit of a history of the whole timeline of I-35. Starting in the 80s, there was a major investment study. In the late 2000s, there was a corridor advisory committee that was put together by the Transportation Commission. And then in 2012, we put together a planning and environmental linkage study. And at that point, it was identified it would be a one-by-one future transportation corridor, and so I'll go over that here in a little bit. And then from that planning and environmental linkage study, we did an implementation plan for the whole region. And in 2016, we started our environmental for our standalone north and south projects, along with a lot of separate projects throughout the corridor. Now,
and Heather, for our AMPO folks, define what you're talking about north and south. I mean, we at CAMPO know, but if you could contextualize those.
Right. So in Travis County, and I'll go over that in a little bit, but 45 north to 45 southeast is the Travis County section, and that's what we call our Mobility 35 program. And so that's what we've been working really hard on the last few years. So CAMPO in 2019 did a big investment in I-35, and then again in 2020 they deferred $633 million worth of projects to show the Texas Transportation Commission that I-35 was a priority for the region. And in doing that,
still have the scars to prove it.
Yes, right. Yeah, still have scars. So, and the commission allocated $3.7 billion to fully fund the $4.9 billion. So the planning environmental linkage study really was, this is the limits here from 45 to 45, and it shows really the intent of that was to show independent utility for the 3 different environmental documents. In Houston that kind of backfired because they did everything all in one basket, and so even though we did the Pell study, we still had a lawsuit, but we had a more solid stance. So also in the implementation plan was Williamson, Hayes, and Travis County implementations, and Hayes County had established a future transportation corridor, but it was only one lane in each direction. Now this is the roadmap for Williamson County, and there's a lot of information on here, but what really is orange is construction and green is environmental. So when I started the program, the red line was a lot further on the left, and so we've come a long way in the whole region here. So we are doing environmental right now from State Highway 29 to 45 north. And then this is the central Travis County section. All of that's orange, north and south is orange, and we're headed to construction for central. Now, this shows the Hays County section. We do have an environmental study that's been a little bit on pause here in San Marcos. It's from State Highway 123 to Posey. And the problem with that we've kind of had with that is that we aren't planning on building the managed lanes now, and the problem with environmentally clearing a median like that is that we don't have an established 2x2 corridor, 2 managed lanes in each direction, which that's what feeds Capital Express South. So because of that, what we're doing is talk to Clayton, I think it was just this year at short course, and decided, we really need a planning environmental linkage study update to really show that there's a need for 2 managed lanes in each direction. And so we're now kicking off a study for 46 miles, and we'll be starting public involvement for that pretty soon. And we're doing that kind of in tandem with the environmental for 123 to Posey, so that we can have an environmental finding on that in 2025. And again, this is our what we typically do on a lot of our information that we give to commission is the orange projects are funded and complete, the blue projects are funded, and then the purple projects are the ones that we're seeking funding for. So we go over these tabloids monthly, and we're definitely working on implementing the whole corridor. So I wanted to show you a little bit on CapEx Central. Don't want to spend too much time on it, but we're heading towards a record of decision in August for $4.5 billion, 8 miles from 45 North to 45 Southeast. We have an interesting layout for it. We have what we're kind of calling a boulevard section, where we put the north and southbound lanes onto one side of the highway so that we can cap potentially. This is the UT options for cap. All the area in green there is potentially area for capping. And this is the downtown area for potentials for capping.
But Heather, before you run past that, I think there was a lot of public interest, obviously, in this section, and one of the things that I thought was pretty innovative in what they came up with is they pushed, in the purple, the north and southbound frontage roads to the same side of the main lanes. So, traditionally you've got the northbound on the outside of the northbound, main lanes, and to preserve the ability to perhaps cap it later, similar to the way, 75 as it goes through Dallas, they've got that capped area there. It preserves that. Plus, I think it allowed you to preserve a few more of those businesses along there. And it was a pretty innovative approach to that. So.
And the green, actually, one of the purpose and needs of the project is really connecting East and West Austin. So there on the left, where you can see the green goes all the way across the roadway. In that area, if it were capped, you could walk from either side of I-35 without ever crossing traffic and onto a deck plaza. And this is what a rendering could look like on one of the cross streets. You can see without the potential caps, and then on the right with the caps.
Have to pay for it. TxDOT's not going to pay for it. It's going to happen.
Again, similar renderings here.
Will you explain what capping is? I don't understand what that is.
Right. I don't know if you've, it's pretty popular around the country right now. And I don't know if anyone's been to Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, but it's pretty amazing to visit out there in Dallas. Well, they lowered it was already a lowered highway, and they came and retrofitted a park on top. And it really, really invigorated the region. And Dallas is kind of we're following in their footsteps. They just built a design build project, Southern Gateway, that has capping that so what happens is TxDOT comes in and builds the foundations and the fire life safety jet fans underneath the roadway to support a cap on top, and then typically the local entity will come and build a park or a plaza on top. Yep.
And I'm from DFW, and I'll tell you, I was shocked, one, to see, when I heard that they're going to put a park right in the middle, I was like, what are you doing? This is insane. But two, just how it's reinvigorated and integrated the area in ways that honestly weren't possible in that specific area of Dallas. So I'm fascinated to see what can happen here with 35, given the history of I-35, the legacy of the 1928 plan. And I think it's a unique way to partner with, be honest with you, our local businesses and our local investors with looking at the infrastructure and roadways to actually make something that's beneficial to everyone in the community. So kudos on y'all trying to look at this and trying what you can do over there.
We have lots more areas than are provided in Klein Warren, and the formula is that TxDOT will pay for, will build the foundations if the local entities, either University of Texas or private or the city, comes forward with the money to build it requires a deeper foundation because of because of jet fans. It requires bigger columns, and then it requires all those systems to run that fire life safety element. And right now, it's estimated we need $325 million from City of Austin for the caps we have proposed, and we need about $450 million from the University of Texas for them to take advantage of the areas that we've identified as a potential. So we're asking to have that money by the end of next year. Yep.
Just had a question. With some of the proposed multimodal options, bus lanes, rail, some of those things, and limited right-of-way, and the need for elevated lanes, added capacity, how does that all integrate and work together to join the two metropolitan planning organizations along 35 with capped park areas and some of that? What's that interaction look like?
Between all the modes,
Yes.
if you will?
Yes,
Between the regions?
Yes.
I think really the future transportation corridor that we're establishing will really help guide what goes into that. We're going to provide that area there. But for I-35, we have two commuter rail crossings at Airport and 4th Street. 4th Street's the end of the line, and it goes right into the convention center. But we know that lowering the highway like this is going to be years in the making, and so we're planning on next year going to construct those red line commuter rails at grade, on a bridge at grade, so that when we excavate underneath, we can really get people in and out of downtown. And so that's what we're doing for the existing Capital Metro red line. And then for Project Connect, there's a blue line that goes over Riverside, and we're designing our bridge to support that.
So Heather, I'm going to jump in a little bit on that one as well. So in addition to what Heather just laid out, one of the things that we're going to deal with pretty quickly is trying to program more of the east-west projects that need to happen so that the mobility, especially on transit east-west while the construction is happening on I-35, is maintained during the course of the project construction for CapEx. In addition, Heather's not giving herself enough credit. There's a shared use path, continuous shared use path, the length of the project that will stay open during the full construction. And then from that, Sid and I have been coordinating for years on our active transportation plan. So we actually have plans that show our shared use paths linking together at some point. But that would have to be funded in the future. So we're looking at those things.
We're building a new bridge over I-35, and that separated pedestrian bridge will be open after the first year of construction, which we plan to last several years to rebuild the whole Lady Bird Lake Bridge.
Heather, can you go back one slide to actually show the caps again?
Yep.
Yeah, these. So, Councilman, those are the caps going across right there by University. It's an interesting project for sure.
This one, yeah.
Whole different new thing for the region.
Yeah. This also here, where the Irwin Center is there, has an opportunity to walk straight across to that cap because with the bypass lanes there are lowered underneath that cap.
I think so many times different folks get hung up on wanting to add capacity or be local, use different modes, and so I think this is a pretty good compromise to get everybody involved and seek sort of common ground that we can all agree on moves everybody. So thanks for working on that.
Yeah, sure. It added capacity for all modes, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, without being a cost of one or the other one, so.
Yeah.
And we're taking full advantage of rebuilding every single cross-street bridge. I've never worked on a project where we've been able to rebuild every single cross-street bridge, and so we're putting 30 feet on either side of the roadway for that multimodal use.
Can I just say something real quick? Because Clayton's about to come up here, and I can see some of the eyes light up on some of our board members, and we're not going to see some of this in our presentation, of course, but I just want to make the distinction that it's two very different projects. No, it's two, because this cap and stitch, I can already see, like, why are we doing this in San Antonio? And they're two very different projects. Our project's going to be, as Clayton will talk about here in a minute, obviously, is more for a suburban stretch of roadway. If we were doing this through our downtown, obviously, this would be something that might work in San Antonio as well. So I just want to put that out there. Before Clayton has to come up here, and some of these people are going to ask, well, why isn't that happening in our region? So, but
Well,
to be fair.
Sid, to that point, I will say the board and TxDOT and others were fairly consistent in saying that, and, you know, in the easiest way I could describe it as, you know, TxDOT's not going to pay for pretty. But they are doing, as Heather said, the base part, but it really is a local partnership to step up. And, you know, the numbers she's talking about between the City of Austin and UT is close to $1 billion, and that is going to take of local infusion. And the project in Dallas was locally and privately funded. It wasn't TxDOT, but I think for those of you in the Alamo area can appreciate not having your TxDOT dollars pay for that, but I do think it's a great opportunity for the locals that want to do something above and beyond to be able to partner with TxDOT to do that.
Madam Chair, we're going to use some of that SEC money to make sure that we pay for our part over here.
You notice his burnt orange.
Yeah, in Austin, we had a stakeholder working group at the time, and we have a long history. My forefathers before me had a lot of projects that were just died on the shelf. We had 360, had that happen, Oak Hill Parkway, I-35 most likely, and so we really, in Austin, have to listen to the community really clearly, or we're not going to have a project. And so I can tell you, lowering the lanes require 22-foot diameter drainage trunk line, 100 feet deep, for 5 miles. And so, I mean, 4.5 billion on 8 miles is a considerable amount of money. And so I don't recommend it everywhere or as much as we do, but Dallas has a good portion that they're doing. But we just hope we get the money from the locals in order to not have that missed opportunity. Yep. So for 281, let's see. Okay. So for US 281 in 2016, there was our Transportation Planning and Programming Division did a feasibility study through the whole state, and through that, the Austin District had 5 different priority projects, and priority number 1 was the interchange at 71 and 281, and that is funded in our draft 24 UTP, so we're happy about that. And then our priority 2 corridor has been funded since about 2019, so we're working really hard to get that project environmentally cleared and built. This is I just wanted to give shout out to our Commissioner Alvin New. He is a rural transportation advocate, and so he has a statewide connectivity rural transportation initiative, and we meet with him every other month and go over all of his key corridors, and he's one of the big reasons that we got the interchange funded and a lot of these. And so just wanted to show you that we do that pretty often. Like I mentioned here, in that feasibility study in 2016, this was a pretty big high crash rate area for focus, and so we'll be going out to the public for that soon. And then also, we have $383 million worth of improvements for the corridor at 281 from the Comal County line up to 290. And Blanco is interested in a relief route, and we're happy. So we're kicking that off really soon with them, and we're hoping we can wrap that all into NEPA so that we can get an alignment set, determine where we need the cross streets, and just get that going with the NEPA. And again, this is, the purple projects are the unfunded ones, and so this just shows you the commissioner's priority to really making sure that these are on our radar. And with these with the record-breaking $100 billion 10-year UTP, I think we're really just doing our due diligence on keeping this in the planning forefront. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather.
All right. I guess we closed up all of our questions. Is Clayton, Charles, or Mr. Benavides, are you going to do this?
Again, no, I'm going to let Clayton go through those numbers.
All right.
But I do want to give a shout out to his group. The TPD section there in San Antonio has done a great job of getting ourselves prepared, not only for the rack and stack and plans that we've been able to accelerate, but a lot of those key projects that we've accelerated are along some of the corridors that he's going to discuss today. So I'll turn it over to Clayton.
All right, thanks, Charles. Sid, thanks for teeing this one up for me. I can only go up from here. Thank you, Ashley, for not making me look too bad already. First, want to just talk about the streak in the streak. Most of you hopefully have seen this, but it's the last fatality on a Texas roadway was back November 7th, 2000, almost 23 years ago. It was the last time we had one day without someone dying on a Texas roadway. So some of the key things that are attributed to that are behavioral. I mean, we can design the safest highway, the safest interstate there is, but the key element in what's killing people is behavior. So speeding, distracted driving, and driving under the influence. Those are the three biggest factors. They're all controllable. We make conscious decisions to do one or two or maybe all three of them at the same time. But just like the likelihood or chance of you dying or getting seriously injured on a roadway in Texas starts with behavior. So just want to make that kind of public service announcement before I kind of get going. So again, Charles introduced me. I'm the director of TP&D in the San Antonio District. For those not familiar with the San Antonio District, on the right is the map. Basically, Bexar County and the surrounding 11 counties is our area. Of our area, the Alamo area MPO is comprised of Bexar County, Comal County, Guadalupe, and then a small portion of Kendall County, which gets you up to about Bernie area. Right now, we have $4 billion under construction, and with the award of one of our design build contracts this past month, we're now at $4.8 billion. So it's a lot of work in our little town in San Antonio, but we'll keep it going. So here's just a general summary to kind of show timelines of our major projects. So each of these lines kind of shows those big projects we have ongoing, and the arrow is at the end is the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you drive through our region, it seems like you're driving through $4 billion worth of construction, and you're driving through $4 billion worth of construction. And this is what it kind of looks like. But you can see 2023, 24, a lot of these are finally coming to an end, but you see those longer items on Loop 1604 and 35 NEX, which I'll talk about. That's going to be ongoing until 2028. So kind of the corridors I'll touch on are basically, a lot of it resolves around the one in the middle in orange, and this burnt orange. I knew where I was going to be. It's all about 35. I-10, it's all about 35. 46, all about 35. Loop 410, I'll get to that in a little bit. It's all about 35. 281, it's all about 35. My last two trips to Fort Worth, fastest way for me to get there was 281. We'll kind of walk down 35 first. Well, I'll focus in is kind of starting from downtown, and this is our Northeast Expansion Project. You'll hear me use the term NEX, and that's kind of what we abbreviated. It's not as cool as CapEx, but NEX is about there. So this project starts just outside of downtown and extends up past 1604, up into the suburbs, kind of the growing area past Selma, Cibolo, Schertz area proper, headed up towards New Braunfels. The goal was to get it as one project altogether. The total project cost is $3.4 billion. But over time, we realized, hey, you can't implement this. There's not enough funding going back to when we first started doing the study on this. And much like what Heather talked about, the Pell study they did on 35, we were doing something very similar on this stretch starting in 2009, 2010 timeframe. So that Pell study, we looked at different options. Expand 35 at grade, bury it, triple decker, multi-level. We looked at a train, we looked at high-speed bus, you name it. The Pell study looked at all of those options. Extensive public involvement. And what we landed on was a second level. So for us, we're not into capping or burying stuff. We're into building shade for South Texas. So this is the shade structure. So, so we do have an elevated section. The entire 15 miles of this project is not elevated. Only in the constrained areas where we did everything with an existing right-of-way without really touching or messing with the at-grade lanes. But as you get further north, as I'll kind of try to explain, you actually touch down and get down in the middle to where it's at grade, to where you have enough room. So we did this in the areas where you just were out of real estate. HOV lane. So on the elevated structure, you can kind of see the 3D visual here. It's 2 general purpose lanes, and then the middle lane is a high occupancy vehicle lane. We have a couple other roadways open. Interstate 10, if you head out towards Bernie, has an HOV lane on it. 281 that recently opened has an HOV lane on it. Loop 1604 that's all under construction that connects I-10, 281, and 35 NEX, HOV lane on it. So at least we feel like we've created somewhat of a HOV network for folks, for the buses, for transit. It helps preserve some capacity, whatever that lane may be in the future, autonomous vehicle, whatever it could be. At least we have something that's preserved a little bit different, and all those projects are set up in that way, in that same manner. Kind of honing in on the 35 NEX, the yellow little icons you see on here is where you can get on or off of the facility. The facility here is not full of entrance and exit ramps. It's not like you see downtown San Antonio or downtown Austin where it's getting that percentage, which is about 30% of the traffic, that's just trying to get downtown, trying to get to the suburbs, or vice versa every morning and afternoon, or it's just traffic coming from Laredo, the border, trying to get up to Georgetown, trying to get up to Dallas. So it's getting the folks that do not want to be at grade in this corridor, how they're not interested in it, it's getting them through and separating that traffic to still maintain the mobility and the access and egress you have along the corridor at grade. So I'll kind of just touch on briefly the status of it. The first project we have that's out under construction right now is a design build contract. So that was a design build. It's $1.2 billion. This starts just at 410 North, so it's kind of over there by the Windcrest area. You have Cowboys Dance Hall, stretches out towards 3009, and each cone on here is, if you drive through there, are the areas where they're actively starting construction right now. So as part of the design build, here's just a couple snips. I'm an engineer, I'm a dork, I had to do something engineering related. And so this is pretty cool stuff that they're doing in the 3D design, some of the over-the-shoulder reviews that they're doing to try to be innovative, to get this project moving faster, get it out the door, get stuff implemented, turning dirt. That's really what the objective here is. It's kind of the 3D design, and so it helps with people checking it to where you can do a real good check to make sure you're not impacting something at grade or something that's unknown. This photo right here is monumental. It was the very first column that was constructed on the entire job. So we actually, actually took a really good photo of it. I can't take credit for it. Someone with some talent actually did that. And so it was monumental because it's something that goes back a multitude of years, and I'll get into a little bit of the sordid story, but this is a first step in that direction. Here's some of the bent caps. If you drive through there, you see these massive things going up right now. And here you can kind of see in both photos kind of the line of them as they're getting squeezed in between the main lanes and the frontage roads. So those not familiar with the website, we try to do as much outreach. The design builder is tasked with all the public outreach, being sure that they're keeping people informed, the public, everyone informed. So if you don't have any of this information, here's kind of the info, and you can scan it if you like. Now kind of the rest of 35 NEX, the one I just talked about was central. That went from 410 North up to 3009. We have other phases of this. The first one highlighted in the top in blue is called Phase 1. That is another design build, and it was just awarded to the contractor this past month. It's $800 million. So that project will be, you'll see dirt turning probably by December, January timeframe. Similar fashion as the one ongoing. It's elevated through this structure, very constrained area. Down the next two below that, you see South Phase 2 and 3. Those are actually going as design bid build, which is our typical, we're designing them right now. We're going to let them, a contractor low bid gets them and starts building them. So we have those two little pieces that kind of stub out to complement the one in the blue. Both of those are fully funded right now. They're in the let schedule for 26 and 25, but have a note on here that we're getting them ready a year early. We'll have these, as Charles mentioned, ready to accelerate. We'll get them on the shelf. That way, when there's an opportunity to accelerate them, we'll pull them in and get them out the door. And the last one is the purple one up north. That one is 2026, and it's not fully funded. That one, we still have a funding gap on it that we're still working with. Hopefully through the next 2025 UTP, we can get the rest of that funded. But in the meantime, we've already acquired the right-of-way, we have utilities moving, and we're about 60% on the PSNE design on it. So we're hitting the ground running, getting it prepared to kind of move forward when the funding is all full. Just a general timeline, this kind of goes along with what Heather touched on, similar fashion of what they went through CapEx 2013. We completed the Pell study. What happened to us in 2015, when we did the Pell study, actually it was managed lanes, so they were toll lanes. So they were elevated toll lanes, which got us physical constraints so we can environmentally clear it. Well, right after 2015, the toll road thing died across the state, so we had to take that off, and then we had to do a reevaluation. So we went back, did the reeval, converted that to 2 general purpose and an HOV lane, and that's the project that moved forward. And so the only thing that's really important on this is 2028. That is the objective, and the goal is to get all of this open. So that's the timeline. I think the first phase right now, One Direction, that's under construction, they should have it open in 2026. So they're moving along, and that'll be a great time to kind of see, hey, you get the first One Direction at least open sooner rather than later. Kind of the rest of the 35 corridor, as you leave NEX, which is on the bottom left-hand corner, what I highlighted here was what do we have as we're moving up towards the Austin area. You can see the number of lanes as you start off through NEX, what we have. And what I circled in there is what we'd call is probably a pinch point. There's only 6 lanes, and that's where NEX ends and where the 8-lane section in New Braunfels proper starts. So we have that effort that Heather talked about that we're looking at with them on, hey, what do we need to do here? Do we need to extend one more lane in HOV? What does that lane need to do to kind of not have that pinch point and get something out the door and try to get something done at some point in time? But it's just something that we have to continue to do along the corridor. Up in the northern section, as we get out towards the district line, northern Comal County, we're still working on ramp reversals. All the frontage roads have been converted from 2-way to 1-way. Us in the Austin district finally completed that. So now we need to improve some of the ramps and some of those intersections through there. So now kind of moving on to the 35 relief. So what we have kind of in place is to complement everything that we're doing on 35 is look at these other roadway systems that help provide that redundancy, that resiliency for 35. So we did a Pell study, and we called it the 35 bypass or relief route study. And so this is kind of what it showed. Highlighted, it shows 410, I-10 East. It showed 1604. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner is kind of between 35 and I-10. It showed, hey, you guys really need to expand corridors in here. So this was identified back in 2013. So this kind of leads into the rest of our roadway network to kind of help complement, to help provide relief for 35, providing some of that redundancy on these other corridors. And so here you can kind of see 410 on the south, I-10 east, State Highway 46, providing that other connectivity between I-10 and 35, and of course, State Highway 130. And so one of the little known facts is that corridor from 410 south from 35 on the southwest side of San Antonio, State Highway 130 is also, that's designated along 410 and I-10. It's dual designation, and I put one of the signs that you see out there today showing that it's already a bypass route that's in place. It just needs some improvements. So the first one that we're addressing right now is I-10. So I-10, if you drive from San Antonio to Houston, you're driving through miles and miles of construction, both in the San Antonio side and out in the, what we call the Houston side. Objectively, San Antonio and Houston, we're trying to meet at some point with 6 lanes for I-10. There was an objective, it's now 9 years ago, that was put down on us to try to get I-10 expanded to 6 lanes. So we're reconstructing it, concrete pavement. We have a lot of phases going on between San Antonio and Seguin. So we environmentally cleared this project, $1.2 billion, 4 or 5 years ago, and are building pieces of it right now. What it basically is, on the top, you see today it's 4-lane section, freeway. We had 2-way frontage roads, so the 2-way frontage roads are all getting changed to 1-way, as you can see on the bottom. And down in the middle, down below, you'll see that we're basically adding another lane in the middle, reconstructing the pavement, making it all concrete pavement, since we have a lot of pavement issues and challenges and poor soils out there. And there's just an overall summary slide on I-10 of how we try to keep track, but every little box on here is a project on I-10, because we did a bunch of $100 million, $120 million, $150 million projects slowly making our way. All that really matters is the green is what we have under construction, and the blue is what we just let in Seguin this past month, which for us, that leaves that little gap in purple between the green and the blue that right now we're working on the plans. We have one plan set 90%, the other plan set they're 60. We just need to secure the funding. And of course, our last objective is to get out to State Highway 130 and then out to get to Luling is the ultimate goal. On the left is what was there pre-existing. On the right is what's under construction in this area. We're replacing one of the overpasses. Here's the Santa Clara overpass, so a little bit of the construction activity going out there. And kind of moving on to 410, and specifically 410 on the south side. So we identified out of that Pell study that, hey, we need to start looking at some things. One of the first things was 35 on the south side where it intersects 410. You need an interchange there. You need a way for those trucks to not have to go through that cloverleaf. Get them on 410. Provide a direct route for them to get 410 and get around. So this was one of the areas of focus. So we environmentally cleared this stretch of 410 to expand the capacity and then to upgrade this interchange. We've funded pieces of projects along here. The interchange is not funded to date, but we've started acquiring the right-of-way on this corridor. We're trying to make some steps in that direction to at least get a couple of the direct connectors funded at some point. So this is the interchange I'm talking about. So you have the cloverleaf, which is there today. Basically, it'd be building the direct connectors up above it, just to kind of provide that movement for the trucks primarily and the vehicles to get around San Antonio that don't want to go downtown. And then kind of following 410 on the east side, this is connecting back at I-10 East. We have an interchange that we environmentally cleared. We bought all the right-of-way, and right now we have the first phase under construction. We led a $120 million project out there 2 years ago. That project is a year from completing, but it's building 2 of the direct connectors from 410. Again, it's a cloverleaf to go out to I-10 East and West. So it provides some of that connectivity to I-10 and the expansion that we're kind of doing. State Highway 46. So State Highway 46 provides a pretty vital link between the city of Seguin and New Braunfels, as well providing connectivity to I-10 and 35. And so as we've started working through this project right now, we've been a little bit on the public involvement, but what it's led to is, hey, you really need a controlled access facility here. You need a freeway type facility for the demand that's out there. Plus it also provides some of that redundancy for folks that are wanting to get down 35, but then go I-10, come up 46. High growth area. This area of Guadalupe County and Comal County proper, you've seen astronomical growth along the corridor. So the key thing here is to get out in front of that, get environmentally cleared, start preserving and getting the right-of-way acquired to where you're able to start funding it in segments as you kind of move along through the years. And then right there, the key thing is not funded, but the funding estimate right now is a little over $1 billion. So I have the little plus sign because we're still working through it. And this is the typical section of what we're looking at on 46. Up top today, it's a 4-lane with a turn lane down the middle in some areas, but it really needs to be expanded out to more of a freeway. And the other element that we're trying to preserve is a transportation envelope down the middle. What that is, don't know, but if you're going to go out there, buy the right-of-way, you're preserving something for the future. And the last one is 281. So this is kind of working our way from Loop 1604. This 281 project here is from 1604 up to the Bexar County line. We started working on this in the late 90s. It endured some lawsuits, toll roads, spiders, all kinds of issues and caves. People got fired, demoted. I mean, it's got a sordid history that there is actually a book written about it. So it was monumental when we opened it. Was it a week or two ago? So it's open to traffic now, all the way to the county line. It's beautiful. We actually are getting compliments from people who are saying how it was taking them 25 minutes to make it down this stretch, and now I can fly down this in 5-6 minutes. So this was one of those things that we finally kind of got to that point. It was kind of one of those things that's good to, I mean, this has spanned my entire career after seeing it, so it's been great to see it finally completed. So here's just some photos. On the left is what was out there before. We had some R-cut, median U type intersections, innovative intersections. In the center is kind of a phase of the construction. On the right, you can see kind of the main lanes with the T-bridge coming out. That's a connection that we built for the HOV lanes to tie in directly to a VIA facility. So VIA brought some money in on this, Bexar County, the Alamo RMA. So it took a conglomerate of money and funding for several years. Mr. Wolf was a big part of that. And that plan helped this project finally come to fruition at that point in time before the big boost of Prop 1 and 7 hit. And so that connection to VIA is something, the first one in San Antonio. A couple more photos of the project completed. Then now kind of taking out and kind of matching in Comal County. So that got us to Bexar County. So now we have the gap in Comal County to get up to what Heather talked about up in Blanco County. So we have an ongoing effort to expand that. It's schematic environmental. We're about 90% on it. But it needs to be a freeway as well. Need quite a bit of right-of-way along the corridor. So we're actively working to get to that point to we're trying to get to where we can start acquiring the right-of-way and preserve that needed space. Now, if you hop up at State Highway 46, which runs right there in Boulevardy, if you get above that, the look and feel of 281 changes. There we actually, someone had some vision years ago in the early 90s to go and buy the right-of-way for a freeway then, and we only built the frontage roads. So the nice thing is we can actually come back in and just put in the overpasses and the ramps with minimal right-of-way acquisition. So this project right now, we're slow playing it from a study because it has some environmental challenges. If you've driven out there, you see there's a cemetery in the middle of 281. So we're still having to work through that, and we have a historic bridge that we still have to kind of work through as well. But this is another one that we feel is a good project. Maybe we can build phases of it with overpasses at some point in time. With that, that's all I have.
Yes.
The first part that you showed with 35, the elevated pieces, has that been done anywhere before, or is that just whole cloth brand new?
No, there's versions of it. I think one of the things that we looked at was in Tampa Bay. They have their viaduct that kind of runs through there. And that was kind of one of the things that we looked at. Downtown San Antonio, if you drive around downtown San Antonio, you have versions of this where it splits. And so you kind of have a two-lane, kind of a multi-level where it overhangs with each other.
On one column like that, though?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Anyone else? Well, I'll make a comment then. TxDOT and the MPO and of course Comal County, I just want to thank y'all for what you do. Y'all have been tremendous partners in a lot of different ways, and back to what Heather was talking about, the sort of figuring out ways to get things done, because it's really easy to stop things, but to keep going and make compromises and get these things done is what's really important for us. So thanks, Clayton. Thank you, Charles. And of course, Gina couldn't be here today. She's in Austin, I think. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for your partnership.
Yeah, I just want to mention also, Clayton mentioned the phase 2. We opened up the main lanes about a couple of weeks ago, I believe. But we are going to have a ribbon cutting June 30th, I believe, there at the VIA Center off of that. So again, really big project. And like Clayton said, we've seen a lot of, we're getting a lot of good feedback from the opening of those lanes.
I do want to touch on one of the things that you mentioned that I think is important for both of our boards to really focus on several different times on several different projects. Clayton, I think I heard you say a decade ago or 2 decades ago, because as we all know who have been in the trenches in this for a while, this doesn't happen overnight. And planning for these things, these kind of big projects, takes a long time. But, it made my heart sing when you said somebody had the vision to buy it and buy the right-of-way and just put 2 frontage roads, because in our county, that is what we're doing with our long-range transportation plan. So I got pretty excited when I heard that. So.
No, and that's one of the biggest challenges, and that's something that gets easily overlooked because it's hard to do. So right now, what we're doing within our district is each county, we have maps. They're old, dated, but we're updating them on, hey, what is the right-of-way footprint? And going and explaining to the county commissioners, you need to get a reservation or a dedication, because in the rural areas that are just outside the MPO boundary, I think Medina County is a good example where the growth is happening so fast that they're just letting things go up and you're just boxed in. So it's kind of that whole mantra of, hey, preserve what you can. But a lot of this wouldn't happen. I mean, these projects have been around decades. Sid, I think, was here for all of them. So without great leadership, it's amazing. See, I'm the one with no hair, but I don't know how he's maintained it because he went through the toll road stuff.
I know y'all are laughing, but I really have been. This is my 20th year in this organization.
He started working there when he was 11.
Thank you.
All right. Do you want to introduce the next
so,
thing? Thank you, Clay.
I appreciate them tying together the linkages between our two MPOs with 35 and 281, and that our TxDOT colleagues are working closely together along with our executive directors of both of our bodies on making sure we're talking to each other. So with that, we're going to move on to item number 4, the regional updates. Ashby, we'll start with you. Or Sid, whoever's getting up first. Okay, we'll go to Sid first.
And I know this is regional updates, but technically we're doing an update on the Capital Alamo Connection study that we did about 4 or 5 years ago. I know we have a lot of new members around this table today, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what that study was, and then I'm going to let Ashby come up here and talk to you about some of the early wins that we've had since we've completed that study. And I do want to thank, first of all, the Texas Department of Transportation, who funded this study through their Transportation Planning and Programming Division out of Austin, and then also Jacobs Engineering, who led the study and who did most of the work for us when we completed this a few years ago. So again, just kind of go over a little bit about the purpose of the study, why we did it, and some of the outcomes that came out of it. The whole purpose was to develop a regional strategy to enhance mobility and identify infrastructure policy and technology solutions for the greater San Antonio region. And we did that by defining the need and market, identifying options, and then recommending potential solutions. And all of those solutions were broken up into short, mid, and long-range planning strategies. The study area, of course, consisted of both MPOs, the 6 counties within CAMPO, the 4 counties that encompass the Alamo area MPO, and it included a couple of other counties as well, Blanco and Wilson, that are not part of either MPO, but that were integral to corridors that are important to both regions. Of course, if you're going to do a study of this nature, you want to make sure that you're looking at what is already existing. And so we incorporated the long-range plans for both MPOs, as well as the City of Austin's Strategic Mobility Plan, the City of San Antonio's Multimodal Transportation Plan, and then TxDOT's 10-year Unified Transportation Program and their long-range transportation plan as well. In terms of the study deliverables and the timeline that we had for the study, it started back in the summer of 2017 with some data collection and some current condition analysis, then moved into a couple of workshops where we were able to bring the boards of both MPOs together, as well as the technical advisory committees of both MPOs, and kind of hear from you what you thought were some of the important projects that you wanted to see completed throughout the region, as well as document the challenges that you saw within the region. And it concluded in the fall of 2018 with, again, some of the strategies and outcomes that we'll go over here toward the end with a few slides. We did have a lot of vision and stakeholder work groups throughout the process, and we made sure that we had some public feedback on this study as well. In terms of some of the immediate concerns that were outlined as part of the study, it's nothing that you wouldn't be completely shocked by, of course. There's few options for direct connections throughout the region, but that is something that really stuck with us. We have great north-south corridors in US 281, I-35, and even State Highway 130 throughout this region, but we're lacking in east-west connections, and those, of course, are very important for the counties in between, and for intra-mobility within each of the counties in this region. Considerable delay in traffic, of course, if you drive I-35, you would know that, and for those of us who came here this morning from San Antonio, it was pretty bad. There are passenger needs throughout the region, so if you're driving or if you're coming from San Antonio or from Austin, the only way to get here today is really through vehicle, and so there are some multimodal needs throughout this region as well, and we all know that. There is accelerated growth, as you heard from this morning. I'm not going to really dwell on that too much, but emerging technologies are something else that is something that we need to prepare for, and we know that. And so with connected automated vehicles, it's important that if we're going to do a study like this, that we take a look at how that's going to impact this corridor. And then of course the freight needs of the region, which are pretty huge. Growth, you heard a lot about that this morning, so I won't dwell on it too much again, like I said, but I think one point that was very important to make was the size of this region in comparison to the Dallas-Fort Worth region. In 2010, the Dallas-Fort Worth region was at 6.3 million, and by 2040 we'll be at almost that same amount, about 6 million people, and so that's a huge amount of population within one area. Of course, the difference is that the distance between Dallas and Fort Worth is much shorter than Austin and San Antonio, and we know that, but that only creates more transportation issues. Obviously, the closer the two areas are together, the more options there are for multimodal options like light rail and things like that. But since it is a further stretch of region, it does become harder to move people, but it doesn't change the fact that we're going to see the same amount of population. These base maps are from 2015 because that was the information that we had at the time when we created the study, but I'm sure we can update these at some point in the future. This was congestion in 2015 throughout the region. No surprise already, a lot of pretty dark red. The darker the red, the worse the congestion. And even with all of the transportation improvements that we had in our long-range transportation plans and our city strategic plans, we just saw that traffic getting much worse. So by 2040, you were going to see much more congestion. And again, this was already with the investments that we had on I-35, 281, I-10, 410 in San Antonio, of course, roadways within the Austin region as well. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ashby, who's going to talk about some of the outcomes of the study in more specifics. But before I do that, I do want to say, no, Ashby, come up here. I do want to say thank you to all of you for joining us this morning before I walk away, because I say this every chance I get, but I don't think you'll find two MPOs in the state of Texas or in the country that work more closely together than ours from a staff perspective, from a board perspective. I don't think this is kind of unheard of to see two MPOs get together. And I think it's because not just our proximity to each other, but our size. I mean, we're pretty similar in size, and so that obviously helps when you have two MPOs that are pretty similar to bring them together. But again, it's not often that you see this, and so we've been doing it for a long time, and I'm glad that we've been doing it, and so I'll turn it over to Ashby. Thank you. See you.
And I just want to echo that. Last year, I was able to moderate a panel that Sid and Ashby and our MPO colleagues to the north of us, the three folks were a part of the panel, and for those in attendance, I think they really enjoyed watching the interaction amongst them as peers, but they recognized that, yeah, they're actually working together. So.
Thank you. So I'm going to sort of Sid was nice enough to develop the slides for us, so our team effort. So what we discussed was laying out from the recommendations that came out in the study, sort of talking through what's been accomplished in those recommendations. And so as Sid said, the recommendations were laid out in short, medium, and long-term strategies. And so if we start to click through these, and I'm going to go back one. First one is formalized interagency coordination. We haven't really formalized that in there, but on a fairly regular basis, the two staffs of the MPOs were having conversations on things like key items like hiring consultants to help with either regional arterials or general planning or consultants. We're on each other's teams so that there's some cross-pollination between things that we're both looking at, and so things are captured in both areas. Also it talks about implementing bi-regional solutions to improve mobility and connectivity, and we have attempted to do that both through our long-range transportation plan updates, but also in regional and sub-regional studies that we've done, regional active transportation. We've both done regional arterials studies, and I'm going to get into ours a little bit later. And we've also worked on other items together there. And then creating a bi-regional technical committee. We have not done that, but we have had our technical advisory committees meet once. We need to kickstart that again. We've got a lot to talk about. I don't think we had as much to talk about the last time. We certainly didn't have 35 in terms of funding, and now we need to really be focused on 281 at a minimum. But even though you heard the San Antonio district talk about I-10, we actually do have a little piece of I-10 in CAMPO district, so that piece in Caldwell County and Luling is within our area. And Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the San Antonio district actually handles that for the Austin district. Okay, so but we do talk about that piece of I-10, and to Clayton, some of Clayton's remarks earlier, I've noticed the growth in Seguin because I'm anticipating that a lot of those folks are going to come up 130 to go to Tesla to work or to other places, but we're seeing growth also in Caldwell County that's moving in that direction. So we're seeing a lot more sort of interaction between the two counties there, and I think that's going to grow over time. As you saw from Dr. Yu's presentation earlier, you're seeing folks from the central counties that are going out to the next ring of counties in both regions, and a lot of that is price. So Seguin is more affordable, just like Williamson County has, and I'm a Williamson County resident, has generally been more affordable, and it is still more affordable than Travis, but not as cheap as it used to be. So you're going to see these things start to happen. One of the challenges that Sid and I have been struggling with is on the transit side of things for these sort of suburban and more rural parts of our regions. There has been transit service provided, for example, through CARTS. Dave Marsh is here with our rural transit provider. That service has been provided, but as they grow in population, they start to outgrow the size that supports the funding through the state and federal sources, and so people get left with no alternatives if they don't have a car. So one of the things I hope that we can talk about when we meet again and before the next session, legislative session starts, is perhaps is there a way to introduce legislation that would change that threshold so folks don't automatically start losing transit service when they reach a certain population growth. That would help both our central provider, Capital Metro, but also VIA and San Antonio, because these systems feed together to get people from suburban and urban and rural sections to urban sections. And so we need to look at really enhancing that going forward. So I'm hoping that's one of the big things that we can tackle as part of the technical committee, and also looking at 281. So coordinating emergency roadside assistance, CAMPO, we have a HERO program, and I think there's also a program here. We individually do not run those programs. They're run by TxDOT, but there is coordination between the two. One of the things that we have looked at on the CAMPO side is we did a regional incident management plan not long after this study was done in 2017, and it suggested corridors, and it then also looked at phases of rolling the service out over time. We are now in the second iteration of that for Austin, and we're looking at expanding HERO service. That contract is up for rebid pretty soon if it hasn't happened already. I lose track of it. But 35, at least down, having patrol service 24 hours a day on 35 would extend. Right now it's mostly in the center of Austin, but even that is not 24 hours a day right now. We would look at taking that to 24 hours a day, but also extending the service down into Hayes County as far as San Marcos for right now, and going up into Williamson to Georgetown. The two districts have been having conversations, and the TxDOT division office that covers traffic, conversations about sort of aligning our two regional traffic management centers and making sure those two centers can talk, and then working out protocols between the two centers. So if something happens in one area, there's a protocol saying, you know, this person needs to be contacted, and up and down the line, and being able to move, change traffic signals accordingly to keep the traffic moving and to improve safety as well. So that work is ongoing as we speak. Then defining priorities for corridor management. We are starting to look at some of that on our side now in relation to the CapEx work that we're doing. So we're having that conversation with our stakeholders now, and we're still early days on that conversation, but there is, I don't want people to think there's no corridor management work going on at all. There is, whether you're talking about the Austin CapEx project or you're talking about the NEX in San Antonio built into the contracts, there is corridor management and traffic management work that's being done. We're looking to enhance that work, so I don't want to leave folks with the impression that we're just going to start digging up stuff and we haven't thought about what's going to happen. Then coordinating the Austin and San Antonio district traffic operations that I just mentioned. So here, developing a regional incident management plan. We have completed that. We're on phase 2 of ours now, and looking at adding different roadways to our regional network that we would support. And then supporting data gathering for early deployment of connected vehicles. One of the things that we just did in the last year or so is CAMPO entered into an agreement with the University of Texas, and also with TxDOT and Capital Metro to look at developing what we're calling Smart Track, and that would entail building a track facility on the University of Texas property at the Pickle Center in northwest Austin, over off of Mopac, and that facility would give different vehicle manufacturers a place to come and test their vehicles and see how well the technology is working. If you look at the market today on autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles, it's very siloed. So there's not a facility today, as far as I know, in the U.S. and not in the world even, where multiple manufacturers can bring their cars in and test it on one facility. They're all designed for one manufacturer. You know, they build their own centers and then they test them. So this would open up that market, and we would start to be able to gather data on how these systems can work, and we are looking at using that data to inform our long-range planning. So we're still in early days on this as well. The agreement's been executed. The land is in place from the university. We're still trying to figure out the funding piece of this as we move forward. So TxDOT is putting up a fair amount of cash on this, and the university's looking to put forward some funding, and then we're hoping to get the private portion of this and asking the vehicle manufacturers to put skin in the game as well. And so that process is underway. And that would also cover the deploying technologies to support connecting vehicles. So in addition to that track on the Pickle campus that I mentioned, we would also be looking at, in phase 2 of the work, of opening up certain roadways within the region that would be also be, and this would also be open to regular traffic, where the vehicles can run, and we would collect the data from those roadways as well. So another short-term strategy was to implement inter-city transit services. That's still another thing in process, and I hope that at our next meeting we can have CARTS come forth and talk about the work that I know they have been doing with Alamo area MPO with Diane Rath. And looking at that, one of our big challenges there is being able to move the funding between the two MPOs. Right now, we have federal prohibitions that the money has to stop at the line. That aggravates me to no end. So, we get told that we need to think on a mega regional scale, but when we start to try to act on a mega regional scale, we get sort of pushed back again, and that's been a lot of the sort of constraints that CITA and I have dealt with on multiple things. We can each come up to the boundary, but we can't cross the boundary. And if we try to cross the boundary, then when we submit our reimbursements for federal payment, we won't get reimbursed. So we're still trying to figure out a way around that right now. The best tools we have to get past some of that, one, TxDOT has the ability to cover the entire area without having to deal with those constraints. The other entity that can do that under state law is Lone Star. So also discussing how public sector could assist private companies to move freight. I'm not going to go into that because we're going to have folks come up and talk about what's going on with our freight work here in a few minutes. But I will say to you that going forward, freight is going to be a much bigger part of the conversation between our two regions. If you look at what's happening today, there's a lot more activity between our regions on freight movement than you might think. Those numbers are going to increase quite a bit. So we've already started to see warehousing coming in, especially in San Marcos, somewhat in Kyle, and then going towards New Braunfels. And they're Amazon and other providers like that, they're putting in the facilities, and then they're sending things to us in our regions as we click and have things sent to us. There's been, at least on the Austin side, for a while now, this notion that the trucks that we see on the interstate are through trucks going from Mexico to other parts, and we're just the pass-through. That is not true. It's not true for San Antonio either. So you'll see some of that later. But on the Austin side, more than 80% of those trucks are bringing something to us. Or they're taking something somewhere else that we did. And as our region continues to change, where we have not had much manufacturing in the past, like San Antonio has, we are now rapidly moving in that direction, and so we're going to see much more freight. I would also tell you that Central Texas, this includes San Antonio as well, we're now being seen more as a distribution point for other parts of the state, especially to the west and to the east of us. We've reached that population limit. So you're going to see a lot more things come in. One of the things I always point to folks is there's a Valero facility that went into Williamson County that's a distribution point for fuel for Central Texas. We did not see things like that before. They were just coming out of Houston. But now we're at a point population-wise where those facilities are starting to locate in our two regions. So priority transportation corridor strategies, you heard some of that from the district, but I'm going to talk about some of what we're doing on the CAMPO side. So on arterial improvement strategies, both MPOs have performed arterial studies. We have moved a little further along on ours, and I'll go into that in just a minute. So next steps is the staff from both MPOs and the districts remain committed to implementing recommendations from the study, and we're all having conversations. I think it would be beneficial if we probably had some conversations more together, staffs that we have not had, but you and I are kind of the old men of the staff with the institutional knowledge of this right now. So we will work on that going forward. Also, focus of the next joint board meeting or technical technical committee meetings to both reanalyze and focus and refocus on the priorities that are in this report, so you can tell us what things you think need to be put on the top of the list going forward, and that would tie in nicely with the long-range plan updates for both metropolitan planning organizations. Ours is due in May of 2025, and my understanding from Sid is San Antonio just sort of did a quick one because you had to deal with non-attainment, but that you have another one coming up. And then making sure that we continue to work with our local governments and other transportation providers and freight providers and the private sector to make sure that we're, as much as we can, trying to stay out ahead of things. I've had folks ask me why I took this job 9 years ago. Commissioner Long's laughing already. I was in Houston for 11 years, and I tell folks there I felt like the playing field was set, and it was, you were always reacting to something. I feel now that I still have a chance to get ahead of something, and so that's the reason I took the job and why I've stayed in it. So I still feel that way today. So I'm going to quickly talk about arterials on the CAMPO side. So a couple of years ago, I found $7 million in 130 concession money that was hidden in a TxDOT account that was for CAMPO, and asked the board to give that funding to CAMPO staff so that we could look at priority arterial corridors and start to do some work on those corridors. The board did give us that funding. With that funding, we hired a general engineering consultant to help us. The goal of that is to take these priority corridors and to start to do project development on them and get things ready to go. So if money falls out of the sky, as it is doing right now at TxDOT, that we would have things ready on the list to go for consideration for funding by the commission. So we identified 10 corridors, and let me back up and say all this work was done in close coordination with our district office. We identified these corridors, and we broke them up into logical segments, and then we prioritized those segments. And so now what has happened is our agreement, we have agreement now with TxDOT, with the district office, where TxDOT, they're assigning consultants to those corridor segments to start work on them, and some of them will be planning work, some will go beyond planning work, and CAMPO's general engineering consultant will manage those consultants, and we're trying to move things forward as much as possible. So you can see these corridors here. I would say the one that maybe AMPO would be interested in would be 80, coming from San Antonio going towards Luling, but we will have others hopefully as well once we get through this list. We're very excited about this work. So we see ourselves as an extension of district staff in this effort. So we wanted to be able to get other things done while the district was also focusing on one, CapEx and getting CapEx done, but also White Oak Hill and those other really big scale projects. We wanted the planning and project development work to continue. So yeah, we're really excited about where we're going on this, and looking forward to giving you reports on this at the next meeting. So Chair, I am done. Do you want to quickly go through freight, or you want to?
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, I don't know that we need you to keep standing up there, because I actually have a question for this group, because you know, a lot of this in my experience. So I guess let me ask this question: who was here the last time that we had a joint meeting? So some, and it kind of was spawned out of the sort of demise of Lone Star Rail. And we had this study done, and TxDOT came and did a presentation, all that, and we sort of made these commitments that we were going to do these things. And now as I look at what's happened, I feel a little bit convicted about where we are right now. And so I don't feel good about that at all. And I feel like that we may take this opportunity, and I've just asked this group if they're interested in actually forming a couple of these committees over here between, say, now and the end of the year, and actually following through on some of this stuff, because it's vitally important for us. If we don't figure out a way, everybody at the Alamo MPO has heard me say, I thought by now we would be the Jetsons, that we would have a better way than we have right now to do these things. But clearly right now, this is sort of the paradigm we're in. But I think we also need to acknowledge that if we keep doing the same things, we're going to keep getting the same results. And we need to build as much as we can. We need to move forward with all of our plans as fast as we can. But we also need to be having conversation about what's next and how do we make things better for folks beyond what's right in front of us. And so I really feel like that we should work together, and that's really going to be you. But of course, I'm a little bit closer to this area, and so I wouldn't mind serving on a committee that maybe works together, not only a TAC committee of the smart folks, and then another committee of the rest of us that could work together to try to meet some of these goals that have been laid out in these studies. So I have that question for you guys, if that's a matter of interest for y'all.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin in that I was also convicted because I was at that meeting and I'm going, oh, there's a lot we haven't done. There's a lot we have done.
Yes.
And you know, I was the parent that when the kid came home with 4 A's and a B, I focused on the B. But, you know, we did have a lot of A's too and a lot of things that we did get done. But I agree, and I think, you know, I leaned over to Kevin and said, hey, you know, this has been informational, but I think our next meeting, we need to have discussion groups and different topics where we are inviting our participation from the board on specific things. But there can be, I think, a few subcommittees that operate between now and then to come back together. I see somebody that's been at this longer than me over here shaking his head. Yes, but you know, that's just my input. And
let me throw my 2 cents in. You know, we set up a very good thing a number of years ago between these two MPOs with the idea that we would coordinate our things, especially where they are mutually beneficial. We set a good foundation for that. We had some things come along that threw wrenches into that, COVID being a big one of them. Okay, that affected everybody in a number of different ways. And so I agree with both of y'all's statements. It's like, yeah, we got some A's, we got some B's and some C's too.
And some incompletes.
That's right, some incompletes. But I'm so glad y'all brought it up because, you know, we are now, a number of those things have passed. There'll be other challenges in the future, but yes, pulling our two together more closely, whether that's at the committee level or whatever, I think is a tremendous idea. And I'll sign up for any of that.
Yeah, and I do want to say thank you. Back in 2020, when TxDOT was saying, hey, CAMPO, we've got this money, we want to focus on I-35, I was talking to my colleagues around the state, and your former commissioner over here was a real champion for CAMPO because it was sort of unprecedented what the commission did at that point in time, and you know, he was standing right there with us saying, yes, they need it. So, and had I not known him and been able to pick up the phone and call, you know, that might have been a bit more challenging.
Yeah, his head's not going to be able to get out of here.
I know. Sorry, I just, woo, woo. Is that hat going to fit, Kevin?
Anyone else have any comments or thoughts?
Hello, is it on?
Okay, great. Hi. I'm sorry I was a little late. I'm Melissa Cabello-Harpera. I had the honor and privilege of being chair-elect under Chair Webb, and very soon will be chair. Thankfully, he'll still be around, so I'll have some guidance. And of course, Kevin Wolf, who's been a great mentor to me as far as transportation. As we move forward and hearing, going back to the demography presentation and hearing the growth projections, I really like the idea of having subcommittees and having more ongoing conversations. I've been on MPO now 4 years, and this is my first time being able really to be at a committee, or I'm sorry, a meeting like this. I'd like to see them maybe more frequently. I don't know how often you have historically done them, but I love the idea of having subcommittees that may have keep the conversation going in between these bigger meetings. And as we talk about the growth projections too, and I know it's the R word in Texas, rail, it's kind of a bad word, but talking more seriously about figuring something like that out, moving forward, talking about moving people around through these different corridors and these different spaces, different communities. I think that would be, and maybe resetting goals somewhat. This meeting, a future meeting, looking at maybe resetting goals in that direction. That's the direction I'd like to see us all going eventually. I know it's a big climb, and I know that there's been some failures in that. So I wholeheartedly agree and would like to see us also maybe have some goal-setting committees too. Thank you.
Councilman Courage. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The one thing I think that we need to do is make sure that both parties take another look at the survey that was done and start prioritizing, as it was said, and maybe set some steps. What's the next step that both MPOs can agree on? And what's the next step after that? And what's the next step after that? So that we're moving forward and everybody's on the same page on what we do next. So I think that if as a small group from each MPO share these documents, ask the other MPO members what are our priorities, and then those groups get together and decide, okay, what's our first step together because we both agree on this priority or that one, and then we have a plan to move forward step by step. So I'd like to see something like that developed out of this.
Sir.
I think the interesting thing is, it's already been well established, and I think we're all cognizant of the fact that our staffs work together very well. The TxDOT members work together very well right there. It's usually always just, honestly, the policymakers usually get in the way of making good ideas and good implementation on things. What's good is about today, we made that first step to be cognizant of the fact that, hey, listen, we need to start talking more and working together more with that as well. And we make that just, as natural and organic as our staffs have, before with that as well. There are great things happening. There's great things that can occur. It's just us being able to move forward in that capacity to saying, hey, listen, let's not trip over each other over certain things. I like what you said about, going together regarding specific policy changes too as well at the Capitol. I think they'll play well too as well. Because how often do we talk about that? We can do so much more together, but we're busy just arguing over ridiculous, nonsensical things right there. I don't think there's anyone here, I would hope not, who's going to tell you, no, screw that. I'll see y'all later. We're not going to work together on these things, but just making sure that we buttress and support what they're doing. They laid the foundation. Let's see what we can do moving forward.
Our troublemaker, Judge Kutcher's left, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw Kyle.
Yeah, he had something he needed to go to. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Yes, Mayor Riley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, do you have a vision for the type of committees and how many, so that we could be thinking about how we'd like to offer our...
I think along the lines of what Councilman Courage said, we would maybe do executive committee type of thing at first and try to lay out what those goals exactly are. I think that what we as a group, you said it perfectly, we can build a bridge halfway there, right? And then you have to have an agreement that the other side's going to come along, and we've had trouble with that in the past. Lone Star Rail was a good example of that. There were some differences about the way we looked at that. And so it's important, I think overall, what we would be looking at together is a sort of transformative type project, and planning towards the future. I think that a lot of the things that happen on a daily basis are handled through staff and through TxDOT and all that stuff. I think it's joining San Antonio and Austin in some sort of a transformative type technology or project that we really need to be working towards. So whatever it would take, and that's going to be under your guidance in the executive
I was just
committee.
thinking just one committee, or, yeah, right, start out with one committee, and I was, didn't
Probably
know if it was
so,
Okay,
yeah.
very good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It's not on.
Yep.
Out is on. There we go.
Yep.
I'm also hearing Judge Brown's proxy from Travis County Day, and just wanted to comment and appreciate just the acknowledgement of some history here with rail that's happening. Also know that Judge Brown frequently does comment on rail still, and that is a hope that we would eventually do that. So just wanted to support the idea of the subcommittee, in addition to looking at freight, potentially still looking at, are there opportunities now to look at commuter rail in conjunction with that?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right.
So I would say our next step as far as the larger group is getting together perhaps with a couple of folks from each MPO as well as our executive directors, re-looking at kind of our short and long-term goals from where we were before, which ones don't make sense anymore, which ones do, and kind of coming out with that with some goals of these two groups, and then run those past the two groups with perhaps getting together again before the end of the year.
Okay, so do you want to work towards that? I think we're going to have a Zoom meeting in July. We have probably an executive committee meeting coming up at some point to run through this. And
Yeah, we can, what we can do, I think we both have similar size executive committees. I think that would be a good start in terms of a joint subcommittee, if that's okay. So yeah, what we can do is circulate the executive summary to this report so you can see it does lay out all the strategies very succinctly. And so we can send that out to everybody here, and then maybe start off with a joint executive committee meeting at some point here in the fall, if that's okay. And maybe, like we said, just kind of talk through those strategies, see what some of the priorities are. And then maybe at some point have some type of joint technical advisory committee meeting as well. And then this larger group, in terms of how often we've met, COVID did kind of put a wrench in it. We were doing about every 2 years early on, and then we kind of stopped. And so we can make that commitment. I don't know if you guys want to meet annually as a larger group or biannually, but I mean, those are conversations that can come out of the joint subcommittee meeting of the executive committee, if that's okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay, I think we have an agreement.
Yeah, and I think for the sake of time, I don't know what everybody's time schedule is. Do we want to keep going with the freight part, or do we want to pause and, we kind of said 11 to 1, I'm just trying to do a time check with everybody.
Yeah, we did say 1, so it's up to you guys. I know we ran a little long, but.
What do y'all think? You want to?
We could probably go through that one pretty quickly. I think we were just going to do a few slides on what each study was looking like. I think ours was going pretty fast from what
Yeah, and I'm looking at our consultant, he can go pretty fast, can't he?
All right, well then let's do that.
We'll take about 5 minutes or so for each freight thing, and then if we can make sure that the slides from today are available for both organizations, that'd be great.
We can do that as well.
I recognize we may lose a few people because we did run over, so.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know who's going first. I guess Jory is with HDR. He's our general planning consultant for the Alamo area MPO, and so he'll be leading this presentation for us. And he'll go through it pretty quickly, right, Jory?
Yes, will do. Thank you, Sid. Good afternoon. My name is Jory Dilly. I'm the consultant project manager for the General Service Planning contract with AMPO. I'm going to talk briefly about the upcoming freight study with AMPO and turn it over to CAMPO to talk about their current study, and then there's time for the discussion on coordination of the two studies.
Oh, I think CAMPO.
This is your presentation, sir. Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you. And so overall purpose, pretty straightforward, conduct a region-wide freight planning study. A few key elements we wanted to highlight included the current and projected freight trends in the region. We heard Ashby talk about a few of those, and we want to make sure that those are not bound by those imaginary lines. So this coordination is a really good starting point for understanding that it does not end in the AMPO region, as well as within the state. And then building off the hard work that it's already been done, including the freight mobility plan and the truck parking study that was completed in 2020. Understanding those flows of economic and logistical freight flows to help with analysis, and that really will highlight those areas of high demand and possible hot spots, and understanding where there may be opportunities for freight hubs, as well as looking at the comprehensive assessment of existing and planned assets out there. Understanding what you have on the ground now as well as in the future will help inform the plan, ultimately leading to a needs analysis that will build into recommendations as well as implementation. Funding for this was funded through transportation planning funds, overall $350,000 budget allocated between 24 and 25. A freight working group will be developed for this study. This group will be made up of policy board members as well as TAC committee members, including some of the professionals in the industry, including the freight and logistics. This would also be a great opportunity for coordination between the MPOs, where possibly a member from the CAMPO board or CAMPO TAC could be part of that working group. Timeline, 18-month schedule for this study with an anticipated RFP late this summer in August, with a hope of getting that study kicked off in October, November timeframe. Build that out 18 months. We're looking at a study completion date of the spring of 25. So I'll go through these slides fairly quickly. This is where we can make up some time. Really just wanted to highlight what is driving this study. I think this group really understands the needs to do this study and understand the freight patterns that are occurring, but keeping up to speed with the regulations and the policies that will impact the overall demand of freight is important to continue to study and be on top of as you plan for the region. Understanding those transportation funding shortfalls. You heard Clayton talk about accelerating, having those projects ready and those recommendations ready in the hopper. During those shortfalls will really help you in terms of, missing out on opportunities when it's really intentional on the types of projects that you can have selected. Having an efficient system and a study that has planned an efficient system will help with overall economic development, as well as the flexibility for funding options in the future. Private sector demands, investment potential. I think the big message there is not being reactive, but being proactive to all the development that's coming in. So really wanted to quickly touch on what's occurred since the FAST Act and the IIJA for freight planning. Overall, state freight plans are required. Funding connection is stayed the same essentially, where the federal dollars are required, or state plan is required for federal dollars. The neighbor state coordination, that's also stays very similar to the same. Really what wanted to highlight here was the planning horizon year as well as the updates. So the horizon year got extended to a 8-year forecast, and the overall updates was compressed down to from 5 years to 4 years for the updates. Factors driving the demand, we've heard a lot of that today: demographics, technology, the industry growth. That's all going to impact the overall demand of the system, and this area clearly has a lot of demand, and so the goods movement is going to continue to increase. As well as just general logistics in the industry. We saw the supply chain challenges, as well as driver shortages, so that all will impact the overall demand. And of course, environmental and cultural elements will impact the demand as well. So how is technology impacting freight? not going to cover all these, but really there's 3 messages here. As I was sitting there, my 8-year-old daughter called me from Alexa 3 times. And so if she can start to do that, she's going to be able to start to probably order some products off of Amazon. So that's going to become a lot easier for folks to order. And you heard Ashley mentioned, it's press of a button. But also from the element of having a truck driver utilizing an app to see where the nearest truck parking facilities are, and then the other end of having flying drones delivering your goods. That all will take into part how technology will come into play for freight. So that's just really high level. Clifton is the agency project manager for this, so he'll be available for answers. I'm sure Sonia and Sid will be available as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the CAMPO folks and talk a little bit about your industry. Sure.
Hello, members of the Joint Board. My name is Daniel Wong. I'm the consultant project manager working with the CAMPO team on the development of the regional freight plan. I appreciate the opportunity today to come here to talk about the importance of interregional freight movement that's happening between the 2 regions, the freight linkages that connects the 2 regions, and the importance of efficient freight movement on the regional economy. So over the next couple of slides, we'll be taking a look at the freight linkages in terms of the assets that facilitates freight movement between the 2 regions, the truck volumes in terms of the level of activity that we see on the highway system that connects the 2 regions. We'll also look at the trip activity in terms of where the trucks going to and from. Next, we'll take a look at the regional impacts when those trucks are delayed and impacted by congestion and what those costs are. And next, we'll look at the commodity flows in terms of what are those trucks transporting and what's driving the freight activity in the 2 regions. And finally, we'll take a look at the opportunities for collaborations to continue to promote investments that increase freight mobility and safety across the 2 regions. So in terms of freight linkages, the map on the right shows a multimodal network that enables freight to move seamlessly between the 2 regions. So starting with the non-highway transportation assets, we have airports, we have pipelines, we have rail, moving goods and commodities and products through the region. And supply chains for industries in the region really benefit from having these different choices to move freight. And next, the map also shows the Texas Highway Freight Network, which is designated by TxDOT as part of the statewide freight plan. And this network represents the portion of the statewide system that is most critical to freight movement. So in terms of the movements by truck on the highway system, I-35, SH-130, US 281 and US 183 are in key corridors for providing that north-south connectivity between the 2 regions. And then, we have a lot of freight-intensive industries and supply chains that operate in both regions, and they benefit from proximity and access to the multimodal network. So you have industries represented in automotive manufacturing, electronics, which includes semiconductors, construction, which points to the mining and quarrying activity along the I-35 corridor. You have agriculture, and then you have petroleum, transporting and distributing energy products such as gasoline and various other fuels. And then you also have warehousing, which is key for supporting e-commerce, especially as it's grabbing a larger and larger share of retail sales. And then you also have traditional brick and mortar retail outlets such as the Targets and the Walmarts, and they all depend on this multimodal freight network working efficiently to get goods and products to where they need to go. So next, we take a look at some of the activity on our highways in terms of the truck volumes. So no surprise, most of the activity is concentrated on the I-35 corridor. You have daily truck activity that exceeds over 20,000 trucks a day through the central business areas of Austin and San Antonio. And you also have a lot of truck volumes on the portion of the corridor where the two regions converge at Hays and Como County. And because of the, the travel demand and the concentration of activity along I-35, we see a lot of trucks that utilize the other north-south corridors as alternatives. So you have a lot of trucks utilizing corridors like US 183 and SH 130 to bypass some of that congestion. And then you also have 281 out in the west that also provides connectivity between the two regions out in kind of the more rural parts of the area. So in terms of the interregional trip activity, we took a look at cell phone-based data to see where these truck trips are going to and from. And as Ashby alluded earlier, I-35, though it's a national trade corridor, it also supports a lot of trips that are generated within the region and that are traveling back and forth, which is especially important, again, for those industry and the supply chains that depend on the network to move freight. So about a third of all the truck trips that start or originate in the CAMPO and AMPO regions, they travel between the two regions. So each day about 7,500 trucks start within the CAMPO region and travel down south to the AMPO region. And in the other direction, about 8,500 trucks travel north from AMPO. And then there are also smaller numbers of trucks that continue north beyond. So about 1,300 trucks continue north from AMPO through the CAMPO region and to points north such as Waco and Dallas-Fort Worth. And then likewise, you have trips going south from CAMPO through the AMPO region and onwards to the counties kind of located along the border with Mexico. And then you also have about 4,000 daily trips combined from each region that are traveling east towards the Houston metro area. And those trips utilize I-10 and also they utilize US 290 as well. So in terms of congestion impacts, we all know that congestion is heavily concentrated in these two regions. On TTI's annual list of the most congested truck segments, we're pretty well represented there, with 7 segments in Austin metro region, and you also have 11 segments in the San Antonio metro region. So together, that's nearly 20% of the total list already. And that congestion translates to a lot of delay affecting everyone. So about 74 million hours in total. And that delay has costs. So about nearly $2 billion a year in costs and delays. So that impacts productivity. That takes away time from our friends and family. And also importantly, it also impacts the competitiveness of the regional economy, which delays increased costs for trucks. And as you can see at the last bullet there, even those trucks, represent about 6% of the total delay. It, represents a greater portion of the congestion costs, about 14%. So as the commodities and goods that are delayed, it increases costs for supply chains to transport, those goods and commodities across the network. Next, we take a look at the commodity flows that are going between the two regions to kind of understand what's driving the freight activity. So we took a look at commercial commodity data sets from S&P Global. So in 2019, in terms of the top commodities by value, we see some of those key industries here represented. with warehousing and retailing, with warehouse and retail representing the greatest amount of value. We also see transportation equipment, which includes automobile part manufacturing and vehicle assembly, chemicals and petroleum products related to the energy sector, in terms of petrochemicals and motor gasoline and various fuels that the economy depends on. And then we also had food products related to livestock and agricultural crops, kind of represented by the importance of the agricultural sector in the two regions. And and as we saw in the presentation from the state demographer, population is only projected to continue to increase, and likewise, the data also suggests that commodity flows will also increase as well. So by 2050, we're projecting a 78% increase in the value of the commodity flows that are happening between the two regions. So that'll grow from about 5.6 billion in 2019 to 10 billion in 2050. And in terms of commodity flow tonnage, those projections from 2019 to 2050 will expect to see about 103% increase in commodity flow tonnage. So that'll more than double from 23 million to nearly to 47 million by 2050. So with all that freight activity that's happening today, and that's forecasted to continue to grow, this slide kind of identifies some opportunities to continue to coordinate and collaborate between the two regions. Building on that history of coordination, between the MPOs and with your partners at the TxDOT district level. So in terms of highways and rail, the CapEx and Northeast Extension projects are highlighted here as examples of the major capital investments that are happening on the transportation network. So for future plans and projects and studies, coordination between the two regions could help ensure that for freight moving between the two regions, that the conditions and the performance for that freight as it moves across the regional boundaries stays consistent and seamless, so that pinch points and bottlenecks don't persist and kind of hinder that freight movement. And then a couple slides earlier, we saw the trip activity and the congestion that's concentrated on I-35. So it's important to continue to invest in the north-south corridors that provide the connectivity between the two regions, so that they could serve as travel alternatives or detours around that congestion that can impact that primary I-35 corridor. And then similar to highways, there could be opportunities for the two regions to work together and work with the freight railroad operators, for example, to promote the development of an intermodal rail hub to better serve the industries in the two regions, and also to kind of coordinate on improvements such as grade separations and track improvements, so that again we can maintain a seamless and consistent performance for the rail that travels north and south between the two regions. And then in the areas of technology and operations, with the operations of the TxDOT Transportation Management Centers, or TMCs, and the ongoing work on corridor management and transportation system management strategies, that could help manage some of that interregional traffic and help the system better respond to incidents and non-planned closures that can, again, impact that interregional movement. And then disseminating truck parking information is key, because as you have truck trips that travel, across and through the two regions, having information on where truck parking is available and located is important so that we don't have we don't have truck vehicles parking in unauthorized areas because they couldn't find parking, and that can, impact safety and also impact adjoining communities. And then finally, with EV infrastructure planning, there could be some coordination as the state has recently implemented its NEVI plan. So in the coming years, there'll be some distribution of formula funding to the MPOs to start that initial investment in charging infrastructure. So in the future, or in the near future, we'll probably be seeing some increasing numbers of truck vehicles that are using alternative fuels. So that would be important to provide the infrastructure necessary to facilitate those movements. So I'm going to pause, and as that concludes our presentation on interregional freight. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And again, I want to thank everyone and appreciate you hanging in there with us as we ran over a little bit. I don't know about y'all, but San Marcos seemed like a good, happy middle place for all of us to meet. I see heads nodding, so Mayor, we may visit you again in the near future.
Thank you very much for your hospitality and the use of the facility.
Yes, and just a shout out to the staffs. I know it took a lot of effort on y'all's part to get set up for today, so thank you all for y'all's work and getting and making today happen. And Chair, like a matter of weeks, right, before
Yes.
your next meeting. So
it's not that I'm anxious to hand it over, but I understand Commissioner Wolf when he was like, "Here you go,"
and as he ran for the door, right? But again, I'm excited about the opportunities going forward and look forward to that. So I guess with that, we are adjourned.
Thank y'all very much.
It was good. It was great to see you. Good to meet you. Yeah, tell me everything. Everything.
So how's that house? I saw you on HBO.
Thank you.